What's up everyone, Michael here with an overview video for the Super Galaxy Squadron EX Turbo update, which the Turbo update is like supposedly the last and final update to the game, aside from some bug fixes if they find them. And so basically this is going to be like their huge final hurrah. And I did a review of Super Galaxy Squadron EX, so if you're interested in my full opinions of the game, you can find them in that video. And my impressions have not necessarily changed. There's a little bit more depth to the game, and I kind of like that they fixed some of the technical problems, but for the most part, my opinions are unchanged. So if you're looking for that, go ahead and check out that video. But let's go ahead and check out the Turbo update, which added boss rush mode, 3 new ships. They also removed the gauntlet mode, which was unfinished and never released, and so there you go. And also they added in a new slow-mo mechanic, so we're going to end up checking those out. Now boss rush is just going through the bosses in order. We'll check that out last, but let's go ahead and click on endless mode so I can end up showing off different ships. So we have all the original ships that we had. They're pretty much unchanged, but we also have black, white, and chrome, which have different mechanics as you go along. So let's go ahead and check out black first, since it is the first on the list. And this guy kind of has secondary lasers that you're able to kind of control the trajectory of, which is actually really, really interesting. And it also has a charge mechanic. All 3 of the new ships have a charge mechanic to where when you're not firing, it charges up. So this guy is able to blast forward. His basic fire is fairly concentrated, which I kind of like, but kind of don't at the same time, because some of the other ships definitely have like screen clearing abilities. However, this guy, his lasers, when we end up getting a secondary, is definitely going to be that thing. Now, the slow-mo mechanic is actually fairly simple, yes, fairly awesome as well. I kind of like it a lot. I was actually playing through some of the endless mode and trying to get as far as I could, you know, because I was trying to get used to the game again and test out the new ships. And it's actually really, really cool, because if you're sitting there and there's like a bunch of bullets, you can actually do some pixel perfect dodges. So the slow-mo, you just slow it down here and like, oh wait, there's 2 bullets, wow, just right in between them, and I'm able to dodge things pretty ridiculously. So when the screen is just full of bullets, you're able to dodge basically whatever you want. Also, I lost my secondary because I took a bullet, so whoops, that was my accident. I'm trying to get it. His hyper is also really interesting as well, but I kind of want to get the secondary before I end up using the hyper. So this is one problem with trying to show off very specific mechanics in this game, is because it starts off a little bit slow, especially in endless mode. I would have gone into the arcade mode into a later stage. However, it reset the arcade progress when it updated the game, so I don't actually have my old arcade progress. I think they did some tweaks and stuff like that. They might have done some balance changes, so do keep that in mind. So that is a thing that they've done. So if you're looking to replay through the game, this is a good time to kind of look at it. And I got health and not a secondary upgrade. Come on, guys, give me a secondary upgrade. I want a secondary upgrade. You don't get your secondary weapon until you find a secondary upgrade, and now it's just giving me primary ups, which is not technically what I want. That is an RNG element I'm not necessarily a fan of, so yeah, that kind of makes my point a little bit stricken. There we go, we got a secondary, finally. Alright, so now we actually have our laser. So you'll actually notice that I'm able to kind of control it by going left and right or whatever, or actually forward and backwards. So the way this actually works is he has a concentrated laser, and this character is all about controlling your bullets, and this carries on to his secondary as well. So when I move forward, the lasers kind of go backwards, and then when I go backwards, it actually kind of concentrates the lasers. And this is actually a really cool mechanic, because it kind of makes the positioning a little bit more important. Not just the left and right side of dodging bullets and sort of positioning yourself just to dodge those, but I actually found when I was fighting some of the bosses and stuff like that, I would be like dodging big waves of bullets and stuff like that and being like, oh, well, I can micromanage my forward movement and backwards movement to kind of like deal maximum damage. Like if I'm off to the side, it's like, oh, well, I want to move forward so I can end up getting through there, and then I just use the slow mode to kind of super dodge everything and get out of the way. His hyper sets up a little cube, and this cube actually blocks bullets, and you're able to kind of redirect your bullets wherever they want to go. And it deals increased damage and, you know, spreads out a lot more, which is actually kind of fairly useful for this guy. His hyper also builds up extremely quickly as well, so I think it builds up a little bit quicker than some of the other guys. Maybe not, maybe it's just because I destroy things a lot quicker than this guy, but yeah, and as you upgrade the lasers, they get stronger and wider, and so there's a thing. And we got another hyper. And here's the overdrive mode, which I don't believe this was in during my review section of the game, but basically if you collect enough powers and you get enough of a multiplier, you actually get this overdrive mode, which adds in a bunch of abilities and makes this really annoying pinging noise, which I do not like, but regardless, it ends up adding like a bunch of bullets and stuff like that. Anyways, let's go ahead and check out the other guys as well. Go ahead and go into endless mode. Arcade starts off really, really slow, so I'm not using that for a reason. Let's go on to the other side. Let's try out white now. White, I'm sort of okay with. He's alright. He has an interesting mechanic to where his secondary is actually little tiny ships that fly around and blow things up, which is actually really, really cool. However, it doesn't really add in a lot of gameplay elements. He's sort of like a tanky ship, but he also has a charge mechanic. I'm not necessarily sure what it does. I think it adds damage to his bullets. It adds like this shock effect. I don't know if it's like an AoE or something like that, but regardless, that's a mechanic. You can end up reading up more on it if this update kind of interests you as well. Go ahead and blow him up. There we go. We got a secondary right away. So now you'll notice there's this little tiny ship, and he ends up shooting bullets when I'm shooting as well. Now, he doesn't shoot when I'm not shooting, I don't think, and so you do have to be shooting for him to kind of blow up bullets, and I think that's what that charge meter does, is it sort of charges up the damage of his abilities. And so basically, it kind of promotes you to not always be firing. Same thing with the last guide where you're kind of able to charge up a bullet and then shoot it forward. So that is a thing. Now, his hyper is sort of boring. It's not really anything interesting. It's basically a screen clear ability. We'll use it when there's a few more enemies on screen. Come on, guys. Send me in some units. There we go. So you'll use that. It'll shoot out little bombs, and they're a bunch of little homing bombs, and it'll end up blowing up everything. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does end up sort of screen clearing when you end up getting the overdrive mode. When you get overdrive mode on this guy, it is screen clearing. It will just blow up absolutely everything. And so that's the basics of this guy. He doesn't really have a lot of in-depth mechanics that you're going to be focusing on, and so he is mostly kind of like one of those survival tanks, and he has a really weird, like, wide shooting range as well, which is actually pretty nice. He's also super tanky, so I can take a bunch of bullets, and I'm perfectly fine. Anyways, let's go and check out the last character. Go in, endless mode. Sorry this takes so long. And then here is Chrome. Chrome is one I'm on the border of because it has some really cool mechanics. I'm not very good at using them at the right times. But basically, they have also a charge mechanic to where they're able to lock onto targets. And so you'll see this little tiny like barrier thing, and you lock onto targets, and boom, it shoots little tiny lasers that go towards them and do a bunch of damage. Also have a wide sort of firing range. This one's a bit more on the offensive side than the other one, I would say. And I think that this one has probably one of the more interesting hypers when we end up getting it, because we don't need our secondary to really use it. Now, I'm not necessarily sure what the secondary does. I think it's the little bombs that end up shooting out right in front of you, and so it's useful for kind of getting up close and blowing things up. So you're mostly supposed to be moving around. I think this is one more of the agile ones, I think, to where you're going to be focusing on your positioning, trying to deal the maximum damage with your secondary. But here's the hyper. Let's go ahead and let a few things go on screen. Whoops, I got hit by a bullet. But I'm trying to make it so that there's a bunch of bullets on screen, and we'll see why in a second. Basically, what it does is it creates a black hole, and we're just not getting the enemies on screen. But if I end up using that, it will suck up all the bullets on screen, and then it will blow up depending on the amount of bullets that was actually sucked in, which is actually kind of a cool mechanic. I was using it on some of the bosses to try and sort of get out of a bunch of firing ranges. Like if I slowed mode and just saw a giant wall of bullets, I'm like, ha, I have an escape card. And then I just use my escape card, basically my hyper. And so that's pretty much how that goes. Now, I like this character probably the most out of the new characters. I think Black is really, really interesting. However, Chrome has the most kind of gameplay elements added in between. Now, my complaints for this update is the fact that the boss rush mode, while cool, it is basically just boss rush mode. Let's go ahead and go into it. We'll just go ahead and go straight into boss rush mode. It's not too complex. It's just basically the bosses over and over again. So we'll go ahead and use Chrome, since I was talking about using her in the boss mode. So it's going to be like Centurion, woohoo! It's basically skipping to that section in the arcade mode, and so we're going to be on the bosses. I should have actually played as Black on him, because he actually has like bonus stuff. But you can end up doing a lot of damage to these guys once it ends up actually letting me do damage. But there we go. So we can end up using our little sort of charge attack thing and just constantly end up firing and stuff like that. But yeah, so one thing that's kind of boring is that the boss rush mode is just skipping to the point to where you're at the bosses, which if you like the bosses, that's fine. I thought the bosses were cool, but only after you actually went through an entire level. I think that the bosses, like in between each area, is just kind of, you know, a thing that's kind of necessary, and it feels like, you know, oh my god, I'm at the end of this area because now I'm fighting a boss, and it's really, really chaotic and everything. And that's cool. The boss rush mode, it's just skipping to the bosses, like, whatever. It's just what you would expect from a boss rush mode. There's nothing like really super original or anything like that. It's just the bosses. There you go. So that's my main complaint with the update. Otherwise, everything else is actually pretty cool, and I really like the slow-mo mode. It ends up adding in a lot of interesting mechanics to where you can use it and be like, oh yeah, I'm super cool, and like it adds maybe not necessarily more skill. It will obviously make more skilled players able to last longer, but it also makes it so that maybe less skilled players are able to dodge more of these sort of boss waves, because a lot of the bosses will send out massive amounts of bullets, and you saw those bullets were going very, very quickly. And so if you're not practiced or experienced within the genre, you can end up using that mode to kind of dodge a lot of bullets and play some pretty cool things. There was a lot of walls of bullets where I'm like, oh, there's no way. But then I was able to actually slow-mo and zigzag between what looked impossible to dodge, which was actually pretty cool. So yeah, another complaint is that in my review, I complained about the boss music. The boss rush mode plays only the boss music, and I don't like it. I do not like the boss music whatsoever. The rest of the music is all right, and I actually like most of the music in the game, especially the intro title screen, and one of the tracks that you can get in the arcade mode is just absolutely fantastic, and I wish I could listen to it 24/7. But for the most part, you know, my opinions are still the same. The game has a little bit more depth, but it still doesn't do anything that makes me think like, oh, this is a genre killer or anything like that. It's just a really, really good bullet hell that does a lot of things really, really well. It's unfortunate that it had some technical issues back when I reviewed it, and it still does have that whole frame rate lock thing. So like when you slow down the game, the frame rate slows down as well, which is fairly unfortunate. I wish they would have been able to find a way to make it so that I could stay at 60 or whatever. So that would have been nice, but unfortunately that's not the case, and maybe that's something to do with my machine as well. Maybe that's not something that's actually a problem. But regardless, this has been Michael with an overview for the Super Galaxy Squadron EX Turbo update, which is supposedly the final update to the game. So if you're looking for this, there is a sort of discount, sort of price increase slash thing going on right now. And so if you're interested in getting the game and you haven't actually owned it yet, check out my review for my full impressions to see if you actually want the game or not, because I do go over a lot of more in-depth mechanics, and this game has a lot more to kind of cover, and a lot more problems as well that I'm not talking about in this video. And so you can end up checking out that review if you're interested in actually checking out the review or checking out the game and purchasing it. So there is a sale when the update is out, so go ahead and check it out. But also, you can also end up checking out my other impressions reviews, which the most recent one I did was for Alba's Awakening, a retro-styled platformer that actually understands why people liked retro-style platformers. It's actually really decent. I don't really end up recommending it because it's a very cautionary recommendation. If you like retro platformers, then it's probably one to check out, but otherwise I don't. But regardless, you can end up checking that one out. I also have a bunch of other reviews. I also have Let's Play type of stuff, and I also launched a new series called Checking It Out, which is basically me checking out the first 15 minutes of a game and seeing whether it's worth checking out in the future or not. So you can end up checking that one out in the end late and whatever. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this one. You can also check out all my other type of stuff like I was saying. And give me your thoughts on the Turbo update. Or is there anything I'm missing? Was there some secret updates or anything like that? Leave that in the comments below. Have you ever actually even checked out the game? I don't know. There's some people that haven't checked it out, and I think it's an awesome bullet hell. So if you're wanting a bullet hell, it's one worth checking out. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, like I said, and I will see you guys in the next video. I might be able to kill this guy without even using slow-mo. Freaking legit. Hyper ready.